Two murder investigations from the case files of Lt.Joe Kenda. First, police square off
Hands in the air
against a homicidal madman.
We're taking SWAT out.
You have to take someone at their word when they make threats.
This was a very volatile situation.
And the prospect of bloodshed grows by the minute.
So now we're in a total standoff.
Sergeant Kemp, Sergeant Velez.
If he starts shooting at us, we're going to return fire.
I'll take the shot, nobody else.
Anticipation is the biggest feeling that I can remember having.
Put your hands in the air, Larry. Do it now.
Then, violence erupts on the floor of a local factory.
Blow it.
There's lead just everywhere.
Why would that happen? We need to find that out. In the state of Colorado, to commit a crime, you must engage in willful and knowing conduct. Willful and knowing are just two words. As is always the case, the devil is often in the details. There's one thing that never changes: murder. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories. I never know where a case is going to lead, but I'll never stop until it's solved. Somebody has to look out for the victim.
If you kill, I will find you.
It's an ordinary Thursday evening, and Clark Coopens is driving home to the trailer park where he lives. Well, when Clark pulls up to his trailer, he hears his neighbor raving mad, and he wonders what's going on. So he rushes inside to his wife.
What the hell is going on with Larry?
He's been over there for over an hour, just acting like a madman. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, no. This is not good.
He sees Larry there with two guns in his hands.
Should we do something?
Not 4 miles away, Sergeant Joe Kenda is wrapping up his shift with some paperwork.
All right, you got the report for me?
Yes, sir. Here you go.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
I was a patrol sergeant in March of 1984. On this particular evening, I was in police headquarters reviewing my officers' reports.
Hey, Sarge. Got a woman out front. You probably need to come talk to her.
All right, just give me a few minutes.
She's pretty worked up.
Well, okay then.
So I immediately went out to the front lobby.
Excuse me, ma'am. Can I ask what's wrong?
And I meet this woman. She says her name is Pam Olson, and she's very agitated.
It's my husband, Larry. He's threatening to kill himself.
She says that she no longer lives with her husband and that he called her to tell her that he had 2 loaded handguns and he intended to kill himself, and he would kill anyone, particularly the police, who attempt to intervene.
This isn't the first time this happened. But now, I really think he's going to do it.
And where is he now?
At his trailer on North Cascade.
Is he alone?
Does he have hostages? Is there somebody in this house with him that he's holding at gunpoint?
As far as I know, he's alone. I mean, it's just really just him and the cat.
Do you mind stepping back here? We can talk in private.
We need to continue to talk to her to learn more about Larry's personality. Why does he get so agitated? What are his problems?
As Kenda continues to speak with Pam Olson, officers rush to the trailer park in hopes of defusing the situation.
One of the officers was walking up to the trailer when Mr. Olson came out and confronted him.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
In his right hand is a long-barreled .44 Magnum revolver. In his left hand is a .357 Magnum pistol. These weapons are extremely powerful. They are made for one purpose: to kill another human being.
Hands in the air.
Larry, put the guns down.
I ain't putting that until someone takes care of me. All right, well, let us help. You get me SWAT. I'm gonna charge you SWAT. I'll be right here waiting for him.
And that's a really unusual request. What is he up to?
We're gonna need TEU out here.
TEU stands for the Tactical Enforcement Unit. It is the Colorado Springs Police Department SWAT team.
Back at headquarters, Kenda continues to speak with Larry Olson's wife, Pam.
That if we can get to the reason why he's so distressed, that may give us an avenue of pursuit on how to calm him down.
Pam, I need you to tell me everything you can about Larry. His background, relationships, anything.
Pam reports that she's been married to Larry for the past 10 years and they have 2 small children together. The relationship was good for a while, but things eventually began to unravel, especially after he lost his job as a plumber.
Oh, he's been depressed for so long now. And he's an alcoholic. That's one reason I kicked him out of the house.
How long ago was that?
Well, we've been separated for about a year now. He straightened out for a while, but I knew it wouldn't last.
So you think he relapsed?
When he called me today, he was slurring his words.
In the opinion of his estranged wife is drunk, that's an advantage to us.
Excuse me for a second. I need to pass on some of that information to the officers at Larry's house. Sergeant Kenda to Sergeant Velez.
If he sobers up, he may be more reasonable than he would be when he's intoxicated.
Hostage negotiator Sergeant Louis Velez has arrived on scene and sets up operations inside a trailer next door to Larry Olson's.
Roger that. Thanks, Kenda.
So what's the plan?
I want you guys to stand guard, just in case he comes out and tries to hurt someone.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'm gonna call Larry on the phone, try to get him to talk as long as possible.
It is my job to try to take the individual from that highly emotional state and get him or her to a position of talking rationally. Anticipation is the biggest feeling that I can remember having. I tried about 4 times to contact Mr. Olson when I first got there, and I couldn't get a hold of him.
Guess we'll try again in a bit.
Less than 30 minutes later, the Tactical Enforcement Unit arrives.
Come on.
Hey, Lou.
How you doing, Cecil? Thanks for coming.
Yes, sir.
Right this way.
Velez brings TEU Sergeant Cecil Hutchison up to speed.
So what's this guy's name?
Larry Olson.
Larry Olson. Seriously?
Why, you know him?
Hutchison says, we've dealt with this guy twice before when he's done precisely the same thing.
First time about 4 years ago, he had a house over on Zion Street. Lived with his wife and his kids. Same deal. Hey, Larry, can you come outside so we can talk?
Hutchison explains that he'd been firing shots in his house and threatening to kill himself. TEUs were summoned. They surrounded the property.
Hey, Larry, why don't you come on outside and we can talk about it?
I'll come out and talk, but I want to do it on camera. I want to be on the news so everybody can see.
That's something that we certainly wanted to avoid, but we did realize we could use this opportunity.
Hey, before we do this, you guys want a beer?
Yeah, actually, we love one.
That'd be great.
Police were able to go down the street where they'd cordoned off the media and grab a camera and actually pretend that they were a news crew.
Here you go.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
And that gives police the opportunity to really overcome him.
2 other TEU officers take him down.
This is bull. Let it go. I didn't do anything. Ow! Let me go. Ow! There you go. Let go.
He was extremely upset about the rouge that we used, and I believe that he was very hostile towards SWAT because of that previous situation.
So there was a second incident with this guy?
Yeah, second time, more of the same.
Try that again!
Olson has a violent confrontation with his wife and throws her and the children out of the house, and TU is summoned once again.
This ain't ever, pigs! This ain't ever!
Man, that guy just won't quit. Yeah, you can say I'm familiar with Larry Olson. He can be really violent, so you better be careful on this one.
Honestly, I don't like the fact that he requested you guys to come down to the scene.
Yeah, me neither. He's never done that before.
You have to take someone at their word when they make threats. He said 16 months ago he was going to get even with SWAT. Well, this evening he has a chance to do precisely that. We're going to have to believe it. The police department is dealing with a 42-year-old man who is barricaded in his house, announcing he's going to kill everybody. TU is on scene and is trying to make contact with Olson and negotiate his surrender. I am in contact with Pam Olson, the estranged wife of this person, to try to understand the depth of the reason why he's behaving the way he is.
So why do you think Larry wants to kill himself?
Well, he's been in a bad way for some time now.
She said that he was married once before, and he lost his first wife and his first child in an automobile accident in Minnesota 14 years ago. And he never really emotionally recovered from that.
Sometimes the sadness overwhelms him. He even started writing poems to get the feelings out, but it didn't help much. The whole time I've known him, he's really struggled.
Now, you mentioned he had 2 similar incidents with police.
Yeah, but he was never charged for anything.
The judge thought he required mental health counseling and prescription for antidepressants. And she said on both of those occasions, they did help for a while, but only for a while. And now here we are again.
But why today? Can you think of anything that might have pushed him over the edge?
There was something.
She reluctantly said, I filed for divorce a few months ago, and the divorce became final today. Well, that certainly is a very powerful motivator to someone with a history of depression.
I feel terrible.
This isn't your fault.
With the situation at the trailer park still unstable, TEU moves into position.
You're replacing patrol officers with tactical enforcement unit officers because they are A, well-trained, B, protected by full body armor, and C, very heavily armed.
Although you have a number of high-powered weapons and equipment, and your job really is to prevent violence if that's possible and save lives.
But if this generates into a gun battle, they're going to end this, and they're going to do it very quickly.
With the area now secure, TEU officer David Moore hopes to help Sergeant Velez talk some sense into Larry Olson.
This was a very volatile situation.
You want to try calling him again?
Yeah, he asked for SWAT, and we gave him SWAT, so maybe he'll talk now.
So they try the number again, and
What?
lo and behold, Olson answers.
Listen, we want to help you, but I need to ask you something first. Are you alone? Is anyone there with you?
Yeah, PJ's here.
PJ? Who's PJ?
That's my cat.
His cat.
So Velez tries to get personal with him. I said, Larry, what are you doing?
I'm done, man. I got a needle and some potassium chloride here.
Potassium chloride in a number of states is utilized in capital punishment to have an inmate put to death. He could inject himself to kill himself.
Larry, why do you want to hurt yourself?
My life's a mess. I lost my first wife and kid, and today, my woman said she don't love me no more. I can't go through that again.
He was slurring his speech a little bit. I wasn't sure whether he had taken alcohol or drugs or both, for that matter.
Larry.
I'm not going back to the loony bin again. Done with all that. Everything, okay? We'll take you SWAT out. I told you this ain't over.
Now, we were already aware that he'd made threats against TEU, but now he's making a direct threat. He's refusing to maintain contact. We have no ability to reduce his anxiety. So now we're in a total standoff. What's going to happen next is determined by what he does next.
You're not going to trick me this time, PJ.
Over the next hour, things remain eerily quiet.
Are we going to hear a gunshot inside the trailer? Or is he going to shoot us? It's very tense for everybody.
I told my guys if this crazy comes back outside again and acts like he's going to do anything, I'll take the shot, nobody else.
Got it.
Hey, Moore.
Sir.
If I miss or he takes me out, I'm going to need you to take it.
Yes, sir.
And that was the best location that we could find ourselves in, where we could protect the officers who were on containment, should we have to make a decision to actually utilize deadly force.
So we're 3 hours into this situation, agonizing about what's going to happen next. When Olson suddenly comes out the front door of his trailer.
Hands in the air, Larry. Freeze, Larry. Hands in the air. Hands in the air, Larry. Do it now.
He comes down the steps and advances further into the street than he ever has in the past.
Put your hands in the air, Larry. Do it now.
Because of Hutchinson's proximity, he can see that Olson has a large, long-barreled handgun in his waistband.
Don't do it, Larry.
Hands in the air, now!
At that point, he was looking in our direction, and you could see the eye contact of Mr. Olson and Sergeant Hudson. He was reaching for his gun. This was an immediate threat to us.
We're in a gun confrontation here with this individual, and it's time to end it. Larry Olson has been announcing he's going to kill himself and members of the TEU team. And now, after hours of this, he stumbles out of his trailer, seeming intent on action.
Don't do this, Larry.
Mr. Olson starts reaching for the .44 that is in the front of his body.
When he does that, he is making a direct threat against Sergeant Hutchison and any other officer he can see.
And that's when a decision was made by the sergeant to fire his weapon.
Damn it, one down. One down.
I'll mark off the scene.
We'll start CPR. Don't hurry. We're first responder, quick as possible. He's going down. Step it up.
At that point, we went immediately to Mr. Olson. And I grabbed one weapon.
It's loaded.
Sergeant Hutchinson grabbed the other.
Yeah, so is this.
Medical was on call. They were just simply half a block away. They responded quickly. He was shortly thereafter pronounced deceased.
The first thing that went through my mind was sadness because I wasn't able to get him out safely. This is not the kind of ending that anybody wanted.
The following morning, the district attorney's office begins an investigation, assisted by Detective John Anderson of the CSPD Homicide Unit.
Whenever a police officer shoots a person, in this case kills him, we need to determine if this case was a justifiable homicide. He had been shot once with a shotgun and really caused some devastating entry wounds.
I don't smell any alcohol.
There is a great deal of blood of Mr. Olson on his person, and human blood always carries the odor of alcohol with it, so whatever is causing him to stumble isn't alcohol.
Later that afternoon, investigators get their first look inside Larry's trailer.
Larry Olson was armed with 2 handguns. In the residence, we find 2 other firearms. One was a .44 Magnum. The other one was a .22 Magnum Derringer.
This guy wasn't messing around. Potassium chloride.
Also, there's 2 bottles of potassium chloride, a rubber tourniquet, and a syringe.
He said he had that stuff, and he did. He had guns, he had bullets, he had poison chemicals. He didn't use it. He wanted the police to do it for him.
In the bathroom, investigators discover what caused Larry to seem so intoxicated.
We did find a nearly empty bottle of prescription medication of barbiturates. An overdose circumstance would produce the same sorts of behavior as drunkenness from alcohol, the staggering and the slurred speech.
Also in the residence, we find photographs of his first family as well as his second family and a suicide note.
That note basically was to his wife, and that he did plan on harming himself, and that he couldn't do anything right. It was very short and succinct.
It sounded like Larry was so depressed that he was immobilized, and he couldn't say anything that felt it had any real meaning to him or anybody else. He just wanted to die.
But perhaps it's what investigators find next that provides a deeper motive for Larry's desperate actions.
We found a book that was authored by Larry Olson. Looked like it was more of a self-published book. And what got my attention was about the author, which was inside the flap.
He's talking about how his family died in a car accident in Minnesota. Kind of strange to put in a little blurb on a book jacket. I know. I'm gonna look into this.
So the police in Minnesota confirmed to Detective Anderson that the original Mrs. Olson and a small child were killed in an automobile accident. However, it was also determined that Larry Olson was the driver of the car and he was drunk. He killed his wife and his first child in a DUI single-car accident. So Mr. Olson was not suffering from sadness, he was suffering from guilt.
He was sentenced to 2 years in prison for it, but basically he was in prison for the rest of his life, in his mind and in his heart.
So we can't really say what motivated Larry Olson to do what he did, but we can make an educated guess. That morning, Larry gets notice of the final end of his marriage, and he's popping pills. He's waxing philosophic about his life. He's writing a suicide note saying how he wants it all to end. Then Larry gets this potassium chloride and a syringe, but he doesn't really have the nerve to do it that way. He has his guns and they're loaded and ready to rock, but he really can't do that either. So what's he do next? He calls his ex-wife, says, "I'm going to kill myself," and that causes her to come to the police. So the police arrive and Larry pops a few more pills and walks outside and reaches for that gun, knowing it's the last thing he'll ever do. And it was.
In this case, it was determined that the death of Larry Olson was a justifiable homicide.
Later that day, Kenda offers his condolences to Larry's family.
I'm very sorry, Pam. You know, our officers found Larry's cat. We'd be happy to put him up for adoption.
No, we'll take him. He's our family pet. He went with Larry when we broke up because he was the one thing that cheered Larry up.
She says, no, I'm going to take that cat. You know, it's a little part of Larry. I'm going to take it with me, take it home.
Thank you.
PJ!
Yay! There's PJ. He missed you. Yay! He missed you.
Mr. Olson, for whatever twisted reason or series of sin, concluded that he wanted to end his life. I would often say to families who lost a family member through suicide, there is no reason in the unreasonable. You can't explain that, ever.
Coming up, a vicious attack inside a workplace bathroom catapults Kenda into one of the most difficult cases of his career.
This case is very murky because of the circumstances of the people involved. This represents an insurmountable challenge.
Alan Brick arrives at work at this little manufacturing company, and he's just getting ready to start into his normal routine.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Alan, something happened in the men's restroom. You have to go. Just go. Hurry.
When all of a sudden, Alan's day took a very different turn. He sees somebody laying on the floor and blood just everywhere.
Rowan, what happened, buddy?
And it's one of his workers.
Buddy, hold on. Let me grab some help. Hold on.
Within the hour, Sergeant Joe Kenda arrives outside Pioneer Industrial Enterprises and meets with Detective David Moore.
Morning, Joe.
In 1988, I was assigned to the homicide unit, working under the leadership of Sergeant Joe Kenda.
Hey, Dave. So what do we got?
He explained to me a 29-year-old employee named Rowan Monteith was discovered with severe head trauma and that he has been removed to a hospital and he is unresponsive.
We're still gathering information, but it's likely Mr. Monteith was a person with some sort of disability.
And how do we know that?
Well, found out a little information about this factory.
It was what was called a sheltered workshop. They were created to help people with a number of developmental disabilities, both physical and intellectual.
Did anybody see what happened in the bathroom?
Patrol is still looking for witnesses. Right now, we've just got the guy who found the victim.
All right, let's see what he has to say.
Kenda and Moore meet with Alan Brick, a supervisor at Pioneer Industrial Enterprises.
Is Rowan going to be all right? No, we don't know that yet, but he does have some serious injuries.
He's such a nice guy.
Rowan Monteith, as described by everybody who knew him, was very sweet, very easy to get along with. One of the joys of his life was Special Olympics. It was something that he really liked. He was really, really proud of.
Do you know what happened? I'm thinking he had a seizure.
Seizures are not uncommon with people with developmental disabilities, and we also see them particularly in people with Down syndrome.
He probably hit his head on the way down. That's probably why there's all the blood.
You want to take us there?
Yeah.
The human skull is covered in flesh, but it's very thin, just above the bone, and head wounds tend to bleed profusely. So is that possible? Yes.
The key to learning what really happened to Rowan Monteith lies in the blood evidence.
We heard about all of the blood that was in the bathroom, and then we looked, and it's not there.
Somebody clean this up?
We thought it would be best.
Oh, my. Please don't destroy my evidence.
Take away this.
Fortunately, as we look further, we do see some blood spatter where apparently the janitor had missed certain spots of blood.
When humans bleed, the force of gravity drops blood to the floor. So if he hurts his head on a sink, any blood that comes from that wound is going to go straight down.
Looks like it's going up, not down.
It sure does.
That's blunt force trauma bleeding.
The minimal blood evidence doesn't quite jibe with the seizure theory, nor does what Kenda spots next.
Looks like his forehead hit the mirror here when he put his left hand out.
Mr. Monteith is perhaps breaking his fall. Maybe he didn't hit his head, maybe somebody else did.
I hate to tell you this, Alan, but this wasn't Rowan having a seizure. He must have gotten into a fight.
Rowan? That's hard to believe. He's not the type of guy.
I said, well, it's true. Ron didn't do this to himself, and the sink didn't do it to him either. We need a human that did it to him.
How'd you discover what happened in here?
It was one of our supervisors, Tony Patterson.
And what did they say happened?
She didn't. She had a class she had to get to.
Can you take us to her?
Yeah, sure.
We meet Tony Patterson. She is a life enrichment teacher at this facility. She's very, very distressed by what she's seen.
It was awful.
Listen, we're gonna need your help on this. Just tell us how you knew something had happened to the bathroom.
All right. Right before class started, one of my students had a nosebleed. So I ran to the women's restroom to get a few tissues.
There's a wall that separates the ladies' room from the men's room. And she hears this noise that doesn't sound right at all. It alarms her.
She became so concerned that she actually went into the men's room.
She sees a man kicking another man repeatedly in the face, as hard as he can kick, in her words. And he looks at her and then looks down at the victim and continues to kick him in the face. She can't even believe that this is happening, but it's happening.
I didn't know what to do, so I just ran to get help.
Do you know who was kicking Rowan?
I didn't recognize him, no.
What do you look like?
She describes this individual as thin, tall, maybe 6 foot tall, blonde hair, late 20s.
I know he wasn't one of the supervisors here. It's only 9 of us, so we all know each other. But we do have 140 employees in this facility, so it must have been one of them.
You should talk to Jane.
Jane?
She oversees all of us. She pretty much knows everyone here.
Thank you. We believe the attacker is blonde and tall, and he possibly knows Rowan.
We ended up speaking with the supervisor of the facility, Miss Jane Champion. She was extremely helpful.
The description sounds like Michael Zerlinka. He used to be Rowan's roommate.
Is there any bad blood between them?
Not that I'm aware of. They were roommates for 2 years and they got along just fine.
Well, that's kind of odd that someone would live with someone for 2 years without an issue and all of a sudden be literally kicking him to death in the bench room. Why would that happen? We need to find that out. We go to this facility. We discover Rowan Monteith has been severely injured in the men's room. It's not an accident. And we believe we know who probably is responsible. Michael Zerlinka.
He's actually a good worker, but like most people here, he has challenges.
She says that Mr. Zerlinka is on the autistic spectrum, and further that he has impulse control issues.
Where will we find Michael?
Chances are he's at his workstation.
Jane Champion offers to take us to where they assemble these plastic parts.
That's Michael, right over there.
Michael clearly matches the description provided by witness Tony Patterson. And that's not all.
His shoes. Check out his shoes.
We realized that his shoes had blood all over them. And bingo, we knew we had our suspect.
Can we interview him?
You can try, but he does have a great deal of difficulty communicating.
Michael had what was then called central speech disorder, now referred to as ataxia. Ataxia involves difficulty in forming words and being able to speak them clearly.
Hi, Michael. Do you know Rowan? Did something happen today?
He sits back down in his chair and continues to assemble his products. He's decided not to offer his attention. It's a very, very difficult situation.
Okay, what now?
I'm not sure. I mean, the blood gives us probable cause to arrest him, but after that, I don't know.
Mr. Zarlinga represents an insurmountable challenge. There is nowhere to go. He has to be confined because he is dangerous. He's certainly proven that.
Michael, can you come with us?
As police take Michael into custody, they receive word that victim Rowan Monteith has succumbed to his injuries.
Charges of murder were filed against Michael, and we have psychiatrists examine him and get an expert opinion from them as to whether or not he can understand what the proceedings are against him.
While Michael is sent to the Colorado State Mental Hospital for further evaluation, Kenda and Moore turn to his mother, Barbara Zarlinga, for more insight on Michael's behavior.
I feel horrible about what happened to Rowan. Michael liked Rowan. They got along. Because of my son's condition, he's always had a problem with aggression.
Michael's problems with impulse control resulted him being unable to tolerate very little displeasure. When displeased, he would often display it in a violent manner.
When he was younger, he was on medication that helped him. Then the doctors decided the medication wasn't such a good idea.
Over the years, they believed that long-term use of that drug would be fatal, so they started reducing the dosage. And as they did so, the aggression returned.
There were lots of little things where he'd get angry and start throwing things. What really scared me was what happened with his caretaker over at his group home.
One day, Michael was packing his lunch in the apartment, and Michael was taking what she felt was an overwhelming amount of grapes, putting in his lunch bag.
Oh, Michael, come on, let's save some grapes for everybody else.
Well, that really upset Michael to the point where he actually threw her across the room and started kicking her.
After that, I begged the doctors to put him back on the same medication, but they still insisted it was too dangerous.
This has got to be frustrating to Barbara. She probably had that horrible feeling that, we're walking on thin ice here. How long is this going to go on before something bad happens?
Well, we're just trying to learn exactly what happened in the bathroom that day.
I understand. Rowan's family deserves to know.
Mrs. Zarlinga, is he able to communicate with us?
Well, yes, but with people he doesn't know, he clams up. You just need the right person to ask the questions.
Now, I'm not going to ask his own mother to try getting him to confess to a murder to us. I am cruel, but I'm not that cruel. So who else would he talk to?
There's a woman named Liz Miller, who was his primary supervisor at Pioneer Enterprises. He was close with her. He might talk to her.
All right, well, thank you so much, ma'am.
Several days later, Kenda arranges an interview between Michael and his former supervisor, Liz Miller.
We told Liz Miller, let's at least get a statement out of him as to what happened in that men's room, because otherwise we'll never know.
Hi, Michael. How are you? Michael, can you tell me what happened in the bathroom the other day with Rowan?
Yes. Rowan. Bathroom.
Michael's central speech disorder made every word difficult unless he was very familiar with the words.
Did Rowan do something to hurt your feelings in the bathroom that day?
Yeah.
She asked him, were you mad at Rowan? And ultimately the answer was yes, but I don't know why.
Did you kick Rowan?
Uh-huh.
How many times did you kick Rowan? 4?
Michael was probably making his best guess. Michael wasn't very good at counting, and he also wasn't very good at remembering.
Liz, I think we can wrap this up.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to learn much more. Michael, thank you for telling the truth.
Kenda may not have a detailed confession, but he has enough to work with.
Do I actually know what happened in that men's room? I do not. What I suspect happened is this. Rowan Monteith takes medication to help him with his Down syndrome. It makes him somewhat lethargic. Michael wants to wash his hands. And who is in the way but Rowan Monteith?
Rowan learned his self-care skills very well. He would not hurry through the process of his personal hygiene routine.
Michael becomes impatient. Get out of my way. I have to wash my hands.
Stop, my girl.
Rowan probably indicated that Michael needed to wait. But waiting was not something that Michael did very well at all.
And that triggers him. He proceeds to kick him in the head, vicious kicks causing contusion to the spinal cord, causing brain death. He kills his friend over impatience at using the sink. Excuse me? But that's what happened.
After extensive testing, Michael Zerlinka is ruled incompetent to stand trial.
The charge of second-degree murder was dropped against Mr. Zerlinka, and he was removed from the insane hospital by his family and placed in a private facility that dealt with multiple disorders, including aggression issues.
It remains unclear if Michael was aware of the harm he was causing Rowan, but his new home helps to ensure that he won't be hurting anyone else.
I hope that our system has learned some lessons since that time. There are always going to be folks who need some help in the form of medication or supervision.
This case, in many ways, is an illustration of how cruel this world can be. Is there justice? No. No, there isn't. Not for anyone. Not for Mr. Zerlinga, and certainly not for Mr. Monteith.
Restricts blood supply to vital organs and can lead to a heart attack. The detectives confronted Lana with this information. At first, she attempted to deflect, claiming Steve was abusive and verbally nasty, painting a picture of a difficult marriage to justify her circumstances. But as the investigation deepened, the truth began to surface. During a subsequent interview, Lana confessed. She admitted that she had been angry, that a friend had suggested the use of eye drops to cause diarrhea, and that she had administered them to Steve. She confessed to squeezing an entire bottle into his water. It was a devastating admission, one that revealed a calculated and cold act of betrayal against a man who had loved her deeply. Following the confession, the situation took a tragic turn. Aware that the police were closing in, Lana attempted to take her own life, turning on the gas and taking pills. She was found, hospitalized, and upon her release, immediately arrested for the murder and the tampering of food items. The news of her arrest hit the family with the force of a physical blow. Their beloved Steve had been murdered by the woman he had trusted with his life. In January of 2020, Lana accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a food product. She insisted that she never intended for Steve to die, that she only wanted to cause him discomfort as a form of revenge for the abuse she alleged she had subjected her to. The family, however, knew better. They knew Steve, they knew his character, and they rejected the false narrative she attempted to weave to save herself. They knew that he had been systematically poisoned over the course of 3 days, forced to suffer in silence while his wife, a trained nurse, watched and did nothing to help him. She had denied him medical care. She had let him languish in a urine-soaked bed, and she had ultimately delivered the fatal dose before going outside to mow the grass. Lana Clayton was sentenced to 25 years in prison. It was a sentence that the family felt was insufficient for the brutality of her crime, yet it provided a measure of justice. The motive, clear and cold, was financial. Without a will, the assets of the deceased in South Carolina passed directly to the spouse. Lana knew this. She had cleared out the house, donated his clothes, and erased the traces of his life with chilling efficiency. In the aftermath, the family struggled to fill the void left by Steve. They mourned not just a brother, an uncle, and a friend, but a force of nature who had made the world a brighter place. They missed his voice, his boisterous laugh, his ability to enter a room and make everyone feel seen and valued. They remembered the mentor who had guided young men, the father figure who had walked his sister down the aisle, and the man who had loved with his whole heart. Steve Clayton's life was defined by generosity, by love, and by a relentless pursuit of joy. His death was a tragedy, a stark reminder of the hidden darkness that can sometimes exist in the most unexpected places. Yet, his legacy endured in the lives of the people he had touched. He was a man who had built a successful life from the ground up, who had shared his success with others, and who had left a mark of kindness on everyone he encountered. Though he was stolen from those who loved him, the memory of his warmth, his smile, and that signature greeting, hello, 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 remained a beacon of light that no darkness could ever fully extinguish. The story of Steve Clayton became a testament to the enduring power of a life well lived, and a solemn reminder to cherish the ones we love while they are still here. For life is a fragile and precious gift, one that should never be taken for granted. The family eventually found a way to carry his memory forward, keeping his spirit alive through the stories they told and the love they continued to share for one another. They honored him by continuing to be the generous, loving people he had raised him to be, ensuring that his influence would ripple through the generations to come. In the quiet moments by the lake, they would sometimes sit and listen to the water, remembering the man who had brought so much laughter, so much wisdom, and so much love into their world. And in those moments, they knew that even though he was gone, he was never truly lost. He was, and always would be, the hero of their story. The sun was shining brightly over the city of Miami on the 10th of March in the year 2007. It was a day of profound significance, a milestone that would be etched into memories of the Clayton family for all the years to follow. The air was thick with the scent of tropical flowers and the palpable hum of excitement. For today was a day that Rosemary Clayton, known to all as Rosie, would join her life with that of William Leslie. It was a union that felt like destiny, a celebration of love that radiated warmth and joy, though it was tinged with the soft, lingering sadness of a recent loss. Only 11 months prior to this joyous occasion, the family had bid farewell to their patriarch, a man whose presence had been the foundation of their lives. Standing beside the bride, ready to walk her down the aisle, was Steve Clayton, the eldest brother of the family, at 52 years of age. Steve carried himself with the grace and authority of a man who had long acted as the head of the family. He wore his suit with a sense of pride that seemed to amplify his natural charisma. When Rosie had asked him to take their father's place and give her away, he had accepted without hesitation, though his eyes were bright with the tears of a man who cherished his siblings above all else. For Rosie, there could be no other choice. Steve had been a constant force in her life, a hero who had wrestled in high school, played football with the vigor of a champion, and grown into a man of immense character and achievement. The history of the Clayton siblings was one of closeness and mutual support. Steve, born 10 years before the youngest, Rosie, had always been the big brother who seemed larger than life. When their father and mother were married, Steve was but a toddler, a tiny observer of the beginnings of his family. He had watched over his 4 sisters with protective devotion that never wavered as they grew into adulthood. After graduating from college with a degree in finance, Steve had quickly matured into a shrewd and successful businessman. He did not chase fame for the sake of it, but rather built a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which eventually blossomed into a national organization. His clinics spanned the country, providing care and healing to thousands. a testament to his drive and his desire to make a tangible difference in the world. Steve and Rosie met as friends, having crossed paths within the walls of a hospital where they were both spending time. It was a serendipitous beginning to a lifelong bond of friendship that grew alongside their sibling relationship. Steve had a plan for his life, a goal that he pursued with the same dedication he applied to his business. He aimed to retire at the age of 40, and though he missed his target by a single year, retiring at 41, he did so with the satisfaction of a man who had succeeded on his own terms. Selling his business did not mean Steve would sit idle. Quite the opposite. It freed him to pursue his true passion, which was to give back to others. He became a mentor to a multitude of young men, helping them navigate the complexities of starting a business or finding the right direction for their own lives. He was not only generous with his financial resources, but more importantly, with his time. At the wedding of his sister, Steve was the heart of the celebration. When the time came for the speeches, he did not need notes. He stood up, as he often did, the first man to volunteer for the task, and greeted the room with his signature, cheerful hello, hello, hello. It was an impromptu performance, delivered from the depths of his generous heart. He spoke to William, expressing his gratitude for the happiness he had brought to Rosie, and he spoke of their father, ensuring that the memory of the man they had lost was woven into the fabric of the day. There was even a surprise recording of their late father that played, a moment of profound emotion that left not a dry eye in the house. Steve was the glue, the comedian, the solemn protector, and the life of the party, all rolled into one. Despite his external success, Steve's romantic life had been a path of searching. He sought a partner who could match his focus, his determination, and his deeply caring nature. It was, he often thought, a tall order to fill. He needed someone with whom he could connect emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. For years, he remained the dedicated brother, the successful mentor, and the beloved uncle, still waiting for that missing piece of his own heart. The change came in late 2009, seeking a shift in pace. Steve decided to leave the familiar sunshine of Florida and move to North Carolina. He loved the outdoors, the act of walking, and the physical vitality that came with being closer to nature. It was in this new chapter that he met Lana Walsh. She was 12 years his junior, a nurse who had grown up in Oklahoma. To those who met her, she appeared quiet, perhaps even a bit of a wallflower, which stood in stark contrast to Steve's gigantic, boisterous personality. Yet, to Steve, she was the person he had been waiting for. They were affectionate, constantly walking arm in arm, with Steve frequently hugging and kissing her, basking in the glow of a connection he had finally found. He began to call her his Lana Sue, a term of endearment that reflected his deep, unwavering love. She moved to Charlotte to be with him, and together they expanded their family, adding 2 Italian greyhounds, Guinness and Sadie, to their household. Steve, who had always been a child of heart, found joy in the simple domesticity of his life with Lana. He played games, he babysat the grandchildren, and he seemed to have finally found a sense of peace. In November 2013, they were married at their home in Charlotte. It was a beautiful, intimate event where friends and family gathered to witness the love that had transformed Steve's life. Shortly thereafter, the couple moved to a picturesque home on the banks of Lake Wylie, just over the border in South Carolina. It was a property that looked like it had been lifted from a postcard, with its ocean blue exterior and prime waterfront views. They spent their days decorating the space with Steve's collection of antiques and art, indulging in their shared love of the outdoors, and staying close to family. They would host dinners, attend concerts, and gather for holidays, creating a life that seemed to be the definition of contentment. Life continued in this vein for several years, with Steve playing the part of the devoted husband and the playful uncle to Lana's grandchildren. He would get down on the floor to play games, pretending to limbo or spinning the wheels of board games with infectious enthusiasm. To the outside observer, the Claytons were a couple who had found their forever. The harmony began to fracture in June of 2018. Steve, a man who was rarely ill, suddenly complained of vertigo, nausea, and dizziness. He was working in his garden when the symptoms struck, causing him to feel as though he had suffered from sunstroke. As a nurse, Lana took charge of his care, advising him to rest. He remembered lying down, and the next thing he knew, 36 hours had passed. When his sister, Rosie, called to check on him, she was told that he was merely exhausted. She felt a sense of relief knowing that a professional like Lana was by his side, providing the care he needed. By early July, the incident seemed like a fading memory. Steve was back to his vibrant self, hosting a 4th of July party that was as lively and joyous as any gathering he had ever organized. He was dancing with Lana, hugging her, and showing no signs of the sickness that had struck just weeks before. Everyone who attended the party left with the impression that life at the Clayton home was once again perfect. The peace was shattered on the 21st of July, 2018. A call was placed to the York County Emergency Services. When law enforcement officers arrived, they found Steve Clayton unresponsive at the base of the staircase in his beautiful lakefront home. It was a scene of sudden, inexplicable tragedy. Lana was found nearby, distraught, telling the officers that Steve had been struggling with dizziness for days, that he had collapsed, and that she had tried to assist him. The death of Steve Clayton sent a shockwave through his family. His nephew, Nick, received the call and could not fathom the reality of his uncle's passing. It was impossible. A man like Steve, full of life and vigor, did not simply disappear. When the family gathered to support Lana, they were met with a series of confusing details. The house, usually a place of warmth and cleanliness, felt heavy. When they went to master bedroom to help with the arrangements, they were struck by an odor of neglect. The mattress was stained and ruined, suggesting that Steve had been confined to bed, unable to care for his own basic needs for days. This revelation sat uneasily with his family. Steve was a man of meticulous habits. He would never have permitted himself to live in such a state. Suspicion began to gnaw at the family. They learned that Lana had no will for Steve, which struck them as fundamentally illogical given Steve's background in finance and his habit of organizing his affairs. They discovered that Lana had begun to clear out Steve's belongings almost immediately, donating his clothes and jewelry, leaving empty hangers where his life's possessions had once hung. The family reached out to the medical examiner, requesting an autopsy and toxicology report, driven by a deep-seated feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. The initial autopsy pointed toward natural causes, a heart attack, but the family waited on pins and needles for the toxicology results. When the report finally returned, it was not the heart attack they had been told to expect. Instead, it revealed the presence of several substances in Steve's system, including marijuana, temazepam, and most shockingly, tetrahydrozoline. This compound, the active ingredient in over-the-counter eye drops like Visine, was not meant for human consumption. In small doses, it caused illness, but in the quantities found in Steve's blood, it was a lethal poison that shut down the central nervous system. The investigators realized the horror of what had occurred. This was not a natural death. It was a poisoning. The eye drops had been administered repeatedly, a slow and agonizing process that kept Steve incapacitated and unable to seek help. The realization that Lana, a nurse, had watched him suffer without calling for aid transformed the tragedy into something much darker. Lana Clayton was eventually questioned by detectives. She claimed that Steve had been verbally and physically abusive, painting a picture of a man entirely at odds with the person his friends and family had known. She claimed she had only wanted to get even, to give him a little bit of eye drops to cause stomach issues, not death. She confessed to pouring the contents of a bottle into his water. Following her confession and a failed attempt at suicide when she realized the police were closing in, Lana was taken into custody. She was charged with murder and tampering with food items. In the legal proceedings that followed, she entered a plea to voluntary manslaughter. Her defense of abuse was rejected by those who knew Steve, who described him as a gentle soul, a man incapable of such cruelty. The prosecution presented the evidence of the prolonged poisoning, a slow torture that spanned days. proving that the death was not an accident but a calculated act. Lana Clayton was sentenced to 25 years in prison. For the family, the sentence could never truly compensate for the loss of a man who had been the pillar of their lives. They mourned the loss of his voice, his laughter, and his ability to light up a room. Steve Clayton was a man who had dedicated his life to helping others, only to have his life taken by someone he had loved and trusted. In the end, the story of Steve Clayton serves as a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing those we hold dear. His legacy is not in the tragedy of his death, but in the memory of the man who stood up at his sister's wedding and greeted the world with a bright, enthusiastic hello, who mentored the young, who loved his family, and who lived a life of generosity and light. Though he was stolen from those who loved him, his spirit remains in the stories of his kindness, his laughter, and the indelible mark he left on the hearts of all who knew him. Hello, hello, hello. This is how the life of Steve Clayton began for many of those who knew him, a cheerful, booming greeting that promised laughter, warmth, and the arrival of a man who was larger than life. Steve was a successful and generous businessman, a man who had built his world on the foundations of hard work, mentorship, and an unending capacity to give back. He was the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately elevate the energy, making everyone feel seen, heard, and appreciated. The story begins on a beautiful day, March 10th, 2007, in Miami. It was a day of celebration, a moment frozen in time where the air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the collective joy of two families becoming one. It was a wedding day of Rosemary Clayton, Steve's sister, and the man she loved, William Leslie. Steve, who was 52 years old at the time, stood proudly by her side, not just as a brother, but as a pillar of strength. 11 months prior to that wedding, the family had suffered a profound loss when they said goodbye to their father. In that moment of vulnerability, Steve had stepped in to fill the void. He was the one who walked his sister down the aisle, the one who stepped into the shoes of the patriarch to honor the memory of the man they all loved so dearly. As he looked at his sister, his eyes shimmering with tears, he spoke from the heart. He was not just a businessman in that moment. He was a son honoring his father and a brother cherishing his sister. Steve had always been this way, being 10 years older than his youngest sister. He had never known a life without the responsibility of being the big brother. He was a hero in the eyes of his younger siblings, the one who played football, the one who wrestled in high school, the one who seemed to possess a strength that defied the ordinary. After graduating from college with a degree in finance, he moved through life with purpose and focus. He co-founded a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which grew from a local enterprise into a national beacon of success. Yet, for Steve, success was not merely about the bottom line. It was about the people. He retired at the age of 41, a year later than he had originally planned, simply because he was so dedicated to the work he was doing. When he finally walked away from the business world, he did not walk away from his passion for people. He turned his focus to mentoring, helping young men carve out their own paths, offering his time, his resources, and his wisdom without hesitation. His personal life, however, was a journey in itself. Steve was a man who craved a deep intellectual and spiritual connection. He wanted a partner who was as focused and determined as he was, someone who could match his zest for life. For years, he searched, remaining the life of every party, the one who would get up to make a toast, the one who would ad-lib with such sincerity that it could bring a room to tears. He was a natural entertainer, the glue that kept his family laughing and calm during the most stressful times. In late 2009, seeking a change of pace, Steve moved from Florida to North Carolina. He loved the outdoors, the way the air felt crisp, the simple pleasure of a long walk. It was there that he met Lana Walsh, a nurse who was 12 years his junior. To many, she seemed like a wallflower, quiet and reserved, a stark contrast to Steve's gigantic personality. But to Steve, she was a missing piece. He was enchanted by her. He would walk through life arm in arm with her, his affection for her evident in every glance, every touch. He began to call her his Lana Sue, a term of endearment that reflected the deep grounding peace he felt in her presence. They shared a life that, to the outside observer, looked like the beginning of a beautiful, long future. They got dogs, Guinness and Sadie, and settled into a daily rhythm of affection and companionship. In November 2013, Steve and Lana were married at their home in Charlotte. It was a beautiful, intimate event where the love between them seemed to shine brightly. Not long after, they moved to their forever home on the banks of Lake Wylie in South Carolina. The house was like something from a postcard, a gorgeous blue home sitting on the water, filled with Steve's beloved antiques and art. They were closer to family, closer to Lana's son and grandchildren, and life seemed to be moving in a direction of quiet, golden contentment. Steve was a man who loved to play, whether it was a game of Scrabble or a silly children's game with his nieces and nephews. He was a giant teddy bear, a man who would happily get down on the floor to play with the kids, a man who found joy in the simplest of interactions. For 5 years, their life appeared to be a portrait of stability. But in June 2018, the first cracks appeared. Steve suddenly fell ill. He complained of dizziness, nausea, and vertigo. He had been working in the garden, feeling the sun on his face, when he began to feel unwell. He spent 36 hours in what seemed like a haze, sleeping heavily, unable to shake the sickness. As a nurse, Lana cared for him, or so it seemed to the world. When his sister, Rosie, called to check in, she was told that he was recovering, that he had just been exhausted. And indeed, 2 weeks later, Steve seemed to bounce back. He hosted a 4th of July party that was as vibrant and joyous as ever. He was a Steve everyone knew and loved, dancing, kissing his wife, living life with an open heart. But on July 21st, 2018, the world changed forever. A call went out to the emergency services in York County. Steve Clayton had collapsed and died. When the authorities arrived, they found him at the base of a staircase. Lana was there, distraught, telling the officers that Steve had been struggling with vertigo for days, that he had stood up, become dizzy, and fallen. The scene appeared to be a tragic, natural occurrence. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of a disturbance. The coroner, observing the physical state of his body, suggested it might have been a heart attack. The family was devastated. When the news reached his nephew, Nick, and his sister, Rosie, the shock was profound. It felt impossible. Steve was a man of such vitality. How could he simply be gone? As the family began to navigate the tragedy, they started to notice things that did not sit right. They discovered that the mattress where Steve had spent his final days was stained with human waste, suggesting a level of neglect that was entirely inconsistent with the man Steve was. He was a man who valued cleanliness and order. Furthermore, Lana claimed that Steve had no will, a statement that seemed completely at odds with his meticulous, accountant-like nature. He was a man who always planned, always prepared. Driven by a gut feeling that something was deeply wrong, the family pushed for an autopsy and a toxicology report. The results were chilling. They revealed the presence of several substances, including marijuana, temazepam, and Benadryl, but most shockingly, they found tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient in over-the-counter eye drops. This substance, colorless, odorless, and tasteless, is not meant for ingestion. In large quantities, it is deadly. It restricts blood flow, stresses the heart, and shuts down the central nervous system. The investigation that followed uncovered reality that was difficult to fathom. Lana, the woman who had been his caregiver, had been poisoning him slowly over a period of days. The very person he trusted, the one he had loved and shared his home with, had been using a substance that, when administered correctly, should have been harmless, but when weaponized, became a tool of destruction. When confronted, the facade crumbled. Lana admitted to the actions, claiming that Steve had been abusive and that she was seeking some form of twisted retribution. Though those who knew Steve well, the many people he had mentored and cared for, spoke of a man who was incapable of such cruelty. They described him as a gentle soul, a man who brought out the best in everyone. The judicial process was long and painful. On January 16, 2020, Lana pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a drug or food product. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She would never admit to intending to kill him, but the evidence told a story of a slow, methodical poisoning, a betrayal of the deepest kind. In the aftermath, the family was left to grapple with the loss of a man who had meant so much to so many. They did not just lose a husband, a brother, or an uncle. They lost the laughter that filled their homes, the voice that greeted them with a hearty hello, the wisdom that guided them, and the generous spirit that made their world a better place. Steve Clayton was a man who had dedicated his life to lifting others up, and in his absence, those who loved him have had to find a way to carry his light forward. They remember him not for the tragic way he left this world, but for the beautiful, generous, and loving way he lived within it. His legacy remains in the young men he mentored, the family he held together, and the joy he brought into every room he entered. Though he was stolen from those who loved him, the memory of Steve Clayton endures, a testament to a life lived with a big heart and an even bigger spirit. This is the story of a man who understood the true value of life. It is a story of a successful and generous businessman who walked through his years with a spirit as vibrant as the sun. Hello, hello, hello. That was the greeting that often preceded his presence, a jovial sound that signaled joy was about to arrive. He was a man who met a nurse with a heart that seemed at the time to match the size of his own. She struck everyone as being very quiet, but very sweet and very nice. He fell head over heels for her. He could not hide the feelings he had for her, for he was very much in love. Yet, when an unexpected sickness consumed their marriage, those who loved him knew that there was something was very wrong. Money, as it turns out, is no protection. This is not a natural death. Tonight, we celebrate the joining of two wonderful people. It is the 10th of March in the year 2007 in Miami. It is a big day for the bride, Rosemary Clayton, and her family. She is finally marrying her love, William Leslie. That is the oldest brother of the bride, the 52-year-old Steve Clayton, who is proudly walking her down the aisle. 11 months prior to that wedding, the family lost their father. Rosemary asked her brother if he would step in. Of course, there were a lot of tears. She could not imagine anybody else standing in place for her father. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? Steve did so in the memory of his father. It was sentimental to be gathered at something so special, where their father was not physically present. With the passing of their father, Steve became the head of the family. Though he never had children of his own, he was always a father figure to his siblings. When his father and mother were married, Steve was just about 2 or 3 years old. He had 4 sisters, and Rosemary is the youngest. He was 10 years older than her. There really was not a moment when Steve was not in the life of his sister. Steve was her big brother, and he was her hero. He was everything a little girl would want in a big brother. He played football, and he wrestled in high school, which made him seem larger than life. After high school, Steve graduated from college with a degree in finance. He quickly matured into a shrewd businessman. Steve and a partner started a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which eventually became a national company with physical therapy centers all over the country. Steve and Rosemary met at work. He was in the hospital, and she was in the same hospital, and that is how they met and became friends. He was very successful and eventually sold his interest in his business. Basically, from that point on, he was retired. His goal was to retire at the age of 40. He missed it by 1 year, retiring when he was 41. Selling his business freed up Steve to do whatever he wanted, and what he wanted to do was give back. He would mentor a large group of young men, helping them start up a business or helping them find out what direction they wanted their lives to go. Steve was extremely generous with not only his resources, but with his time, and Steve always had time for his family. In a home video, Rosemary filmed Steve as he teased their Uncle Max. It was special. Their father was not so funny. He was more serious, much more serious. He was always serious. But where did that money come from? Steve? I do not know when his sister Rosemary got married. It was the good humor of Steve that made him the life and soul of the occasion. Please get up, Steve. Steve was always the first guy to get up to give a toast anywhere. Hello, hello, hello. It was always ad-lib for him, from the heart. This is my way of getting away from the emotional stuff, he said. William, thank you so much. I am not going to look at you. Thank you so much for making my sister so happy and my dad. Steve was never one to hide his emotions. My dad told me, before he passed, to take care of my sister, to honor you, and he loved you very much. I have to get serious here. All right, I am cool. All right, you guys are great companions. You are great partners. And my sister, I have never seen her happier. After the speeches, Steve stepped up for the father-daughter dance. He came up, and they got ready to dance. And before the music started, they had a very, very powerful moment. A surprise recording of their dearly departed father played out. The best moment of my day was when you were climbing my knee. You would say, Daddy, I love you. I miss those days. I really do, because I love you too. He had so many duties that day. He was the brother. He was the best man. He was the entertainment. And he was the one that kept everyone calm and kept everyone laughing. He was a natural at it. Despite his success and close network of family and friends, the romantic life of Steve had been rocky. He looked for a partner that was as focused, determined, loving, and caring as he was. And that is a tall order to fill, now at 52 years of age. His family figured it would take a very special person to sweep him off his feet. Steve was always looking for somebody on a level he could connect with emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. 3 years later, that is exactly what happened. In late 2009, Steve decided to leave his home state of Florida for a change of pace in North Carolina. He really loved being physical. He loved walking. He loved anything to do with being outdoors. So, when he moved from South Florida to North Carolina, he had the opportunity to be outdoors a lot more. Within just a few months, Steve announced that he had met someone special. He seemed to have a glow that he had been missing for a little while, and he was excited. Her name was Lana Walsh, 12 years his junior. She was a nurse who grew up in Oklahoma. She struck his sister as being very sweet, very quiet, but very sweet. This quietness stood out because Steve was not very quiet. The personality of Steve was gigantic. She was more like a wallflower. Despite their differences, Steve was sure she was the one. They were very affectionate with each other, always arm in arm. Steve was always hugging her, squeezing her and kissing her. I felt happy for my brother, Rosemary recalled. So, of course, anybody that he loved, I was going to embrace. It was not long before Steve asked Lana to move in with him. After they got to know each other quite a bit more, Steve persuaded her to come to Charlotte. Steve could be very convincing. They added some new additions to the family. The first dog that Steve and Lana got was Guinness, an Italian greyhound. They loved the breed, and so they decided that they wanted another one, whose name was Sadie. With Lana, Steve finally felt he had found his missing piece. Steve always had great things to say about her. He referred to her as his Lana Sue. He could not hide the feelings he had for her. He was very much in love with her. I think Steve found himself well grounded with Lana. I felt like Steve found a certain sense of peace with her. Steve Clayton came to North Carolina for a change from his old life and found a whole new future. When Steve Clayton danced with his sister at her wedding, he dreamed of finding his own special someone. Now, 6 years later, he was about to marry the love of his life, a nurse named Lana Walsh. It was a lovely day in November of 2013. Many of the family had traveled to North Carolina just to be there and enjoy that day with him, and he made it very special for everyone. Lana and Steve's wedding took place at their house in Charlotte. It was such a beautiful event. You could just see the love. Both of them were beaming. Soon after, the couple decided to relocate and move into their forever home, just over the border in South Carolina, on the banks of Lake Wylie. It was like something on a postcard. This gorgeous ocean blue home, sitting on a gorgeous piece of lakefront property. It was very lovely. The couple set about refurbishing their new home, decorating it with a collection of artworks and antiques that Steve possessed. Steve was the kind of person for whom objects were very personal, and he was very proud of his possessions. They were all unique in some way. The move allowed the couple to indulge in their love of nature. If there was something fun and outdoorsy to do, he was going to be the first one there, and he was gung-ho about it. Their relocation to South Carolina also meant the pair were closer to the extended family of Steve. His nephew remembered, "I married a niece of Steve in 2010, so I officially became his nephew." We hung out with Steve and Lana a lot when they moved up here. We would go out to dinner with them. We would go to concerts. We would go to special events every holiday. They were also just a 30-minute drive from the son and grandchildren of Lana, and the pair never said no to a bit of babysitting. Steve had a way with children because Steve had always been a child at heart. He was the kind of guy who would get down on the floor and play with the kids. Pop goes the weasel, with the kids around. There was never a dull moment in the Clayton household. Steve enjoyed playing all kinds of games. Whether it was Scrabble or even a silly child's game, he was fully present. He would ask the children to spin the spinner and turn the handles. Steve was a huge teddy bear. They loved to play with him. He always had kids hanging on him. Lana was always game for some fun, too. They seemed to be a team, a thriving unit. 5 years into their marriage, Steve and Lana appeared to be thriving. But in June of 2018, Steve suddenly fell ill. He said he felt dizzy, complaining of vertigo. He said that his ear hurt and that he felt nauseous. He started getting sick in the yard. His sister felt real bad for him. She knew that he had had issues with vertigo prior to this. He said he had been very ill and did not know exactly what was wrong. He remembered that he was working out in the garden and started to feel dizzy, nauseous, and had a headache. He thought that maybe he had gotten sunstroke. As a nurse, Lana thought the best thing for Steve was bed rest. He said he remembered laying down, and the next time he opened his eyes, 36 hours had passed. Worried, Rosemary called Lana to see if she could explain the mystery illness of Steve. She asked her what she thought was going on, because it is very odd for any person of any age to lose 36 hours of time. Lana said that he was fine, and that she was watching him, making sure he was okay. Though he had never been ill like this before, Lana thought that Steve was just exhausted. The sister felt reassured that Lana was there to take care of him in any way that she could, especially with her knowledge as a nurse. It seemed the larger-than-life energy of Steve was starting to catch up with him. But just 2 weeks later, it appeared the treatment of Lana had worked. Steve was back to his old self, throwing a party for the 4th of July. That party was just as great as every other party they had been to there. Steve was his normal, affectionate self. Everybody had a great time. Steve was dancing with Lana as they celebrated in style. He grabbed Lana right away, and everyone followed suit and joined in. Things were good at the Clayton home. No one doubted the lives of Lana and Steve were going to be happy and long. On July 21st, 2018, a call came into the York County 911 Center. Police units arrived on the scene, and body camera footage recorded by the responding officer, Sergeant Day, captured what they found. As they walked into the front door, there was Steve, right at the bottom of the grand staircase. Unfortunately, at that point, he was gone. He was dead. You could hear the officers whispering and talking in low voices because Lana Clayton was just around the corner, distraught and crying. They did not want to say anything that was disturbing to her. Sergeant Day needed to talk with the wife of Steve, Lana, to find out what had happened. She told Sergeant Day that Steve had been suffering dizziness for 2 days. Stephen had been very ill with vertigo. She claimed that she had found him Thursday morning when he stood up, got very dizzy and collapsed, and that she had to help him upstairs. And since that time, he had not been back downstairs. Miss Clayton, you were outside. You were working outside? I was mowing the lawn real quick, and when I came in, I fell down. I am so sorry. I tried to take a blanket underneath me, but I could not. Despite her training, Lana was unable to render aid to Steve. That was when she panicked because she knew she could not do anything further to help him. So she immediately ran out when she heard a motorcycle coming by to wave someone down to call 911. The nephew, Nick French, was on duty as a police officer when he got the news. His mother called and said Uncle Steve died. It was just a sense of disbelief. He knew it was for real, but it did not really sink in. So he got there as quick as he could. He kept thinking, how? Why? The phone rang for Rosemary, 700 miles away, and she saw it was her nephew calling. He said, Uncle Steve died. Uncle Steve died. That was not possible. It was not possible. How could he be gone? She could not believe it. Sergeant Day checked for any signs that Steve may have been attacked. This looked like it was probably a natural death, but you never know. So Sergeant Day went upstairs to look to see what had happened. That would be a little unnerving, to go through a labyrinth of a house that you had never seen before, because you never know what could be around the corner. You could tell that there did not appear to be a sign of struggle. No other signs of someone else being up there having done something to him. Nothing significant at all. In the master bedroom, the bed sheet was all rumpled up, but nothing to suggest Steve had any kind of struggle. It looked as if the cause of death would not be a mystery for the coroner. The coroner could not see any contusions or bruises. Nothing suggested Steve fell down the staircase. It looked as though Steve made it to the bottom of the stairs and then collapsed. The coroner said, I believe he had a heart attack. Back in the living room, Sergeant Day told Lana what they thought had happened. While Lana digested the news, Nick and his family helped with cleaning up. They wanted to make the house still comfortable enough for her. They knew she was going to be exhausted, but they were shocked at what they found in the bedroom. When they went upstairs, they immediately noticed the smell. It was a smell of human filth, excrement, and urine. They looked around, and there were huge urine discoloration spots in the middle of the bed. The soiled mattress raised some questions. They thought the amount of urine that it would take to soak through this mattress meant Steve had to have been going to the bathroom in this bed for days. So they immediately thought, we have to get this mattress out of the room. It was extremely heavy. They took the mattress and tossed it out of the house. When Rosemary talked with Lana on the phone, she asked her, how did Steve get so ill? When she spoke with Lana much later in that evening, she asked her what happened. Lana said he had not been feeling well for a few days. Rosemary asked, why did you not call somebody? Why did you not let somebody know? Lana said, well, he was starting to feel better. She said Steve never called because he had been sleeping heavily and had misplaced his cell phone a week earlier. Lana claimed that it had been missing for several days. But the brother of Rosemary was never, ever without his phone. He was always attached to his phone. It went everywhere with him. It was at that point where Rosemary really felt like something very sinister was going on. Steve's sister asked his widow, Lana, about his will. Steve and Rosemary had talked many times about what it was that he wanted to do when that time came, and he wanted to be buried in that beautiful cemetery in Fort Lauderdale. When she asked Lana, she said there was no will. Lana had already made the arrangements. Steve was due to be cremated, and she was planning his memorial. On August 4th, 2018, Lana held a service for Steve at their home. It was highly emotional. Everybody there felt such a deep connection to Steve. It was just hard to stay calm. Even though it was supposed to be a celebration of his life, it just could not help but feel the deep, deep sorrow that everybody felt. At the memorial, Rosemary and the family were surprised to find Lana had already started to clear out the belongings of Steve. She had already begun taking all of his clothes and all of his personal items, and she donated them all to the Veterans Administration. Rosemary was almost knocked off her feet to see the number of empty hangers in that closet, with not a single stitch of clothes. A lot of watches were missing. A lot of jewelry was missing. His wedding ring was missing. The claims of Lana about Steve not having will raise further suspicions. There's absolutely no logic in the brother. An accountant and a person who was meticulous with his finances, not having a will. The family felt like something was not adding up. They were all on the same page. They knew something was going on, so they called the medical examiner's office and said, please do an autopsy. And at the very least, if you're not going to do that, do a toxicology. They agreed to it. When the autopsy report came in, it listed signs of heart disease and pointed to death by natural causes. But they had to wait for the toxicologist report to come back to finally make an actual finding. It would take a few weeks before those results arrived. So they waited on pins and needles for the truth to come out. They just knew that there was something very wrong. When the toxicology report on the blood of Steve Clayton came back, it was shocking. It showed traces of several sedatives, including marijuana, temazepam, and Benadryl. But that was not all. The biggest shock in the toxicology results was tetrahydrozoline, also known as THC. It is the active ingredient in eye drops like Visine or other over-the-counter eye drops. THC is not ever meant to be ingested. Given in small doses, it makes you feel very ill. It makes you nauseous. It makes you dizzy. It will make you pass out eventually. But in large quantities, it is deadly. It shuts your central nervous system down, and it will kill you. The detectives learned that THC could limit the blood supply to vital organs, leading to a heart attack. When the body camera footage was reviewed, the Visine was on the tall dresser that was away from the bed. That was where he could not get up to get the Visine. Now, it was very clear. This was not a natural death. Detective Moats needed to have a talk with Lana Clayton. 5 weeks after the sudden death of her husband, Lana Clayton was questioned by detectives. They wanted to know more about the medications found in the blood of Steve. It was a long list, but there was no mention of THC, the drug that killed Steve. It is colorless, odorless, and tasteless, which makes it the perfect thing to give to someone if you want to poison them. The level of THC in the blood of Steve was so high that it was clear it was the cause of death. It is a lethal level, no matter what way you look at it. The detectives pressed on. Somehow or another, there was a large amount of Visine in his system. So that was what they were trying to get to the bottom of. The detectives asked, I know he puts the Visine in his coffee. He puts it in there every day. What do you know about it? Lana replied, what do I know about it? I know it makes you have diarrhea. There were basically two things that the police were now considering. One, he was poisoned, and there was foul play. Two, he ingested it on his own, whether it was intentional or unintentional. As police probed the relationship of Steve and Lana, they asked, how has your life been? Lana said, sometimes we would have fun and everything, and then sometimes I would be on eggshells. All the time I was on eggshells. Lana claimed that Steve had a dark side. He could be really nasty. What does nasty Steve look like? He is really verbally abusive, calling me names. Like what would he call you? I do not know. Stupid bitch. I do not know. Just all kind of things. I could see it escalating until you notice. Just try and stay out of his way. After the interview with Lana, the detectives ordered a search of the house. They were looking for cups or glasses that had a residue in them. They were looking for anything they could find that helped them determine what could have caused this. Anything document-wise that would show trouble in the marriage. But during that time, Lana told the officer that she wanted to speak again with Detective Moats. Detective Moats recorded what Lana had to say. I told you a little bit about Stephen. It was worse than what I told you. He was verbally and physically abusive. Lana, for God's sake. And yell at me and call me names. His anger built up, you know. I would do something that would irritate him until the point where he would explode. After he had that incident, which he said it was vertigo, and I was taking care of him and everything, but I was still so angry. And my girlfriend at work told me, you want to get even with somebody, you know, put Visine in a drink, it will cause diarrhea. It was then that Lana dropped a bombshell. When I saw that Visine on the table, it just came back to me, and I just took and squirted it. And what did you squirt it into? His water. Into his water? So you do not know the full amount? I mean, you just squeezed. I think I put the whole thing in. So the whole bottle? I think I did. I squeezed it hard. I just saw it there, and I just did it. It was a damning confession, but the detectives could not arrest Lana just yet. They got their ducks in a row as far as what charges would be made, and they were ready to come back the next day to arrest Lana Clayton. But early that morning, they got a call from one of the neighbors of Lana. They found notes of suicide. They were afraid that she had harmed herself. She knew the police were coming back the next day, and she knew they would have warrants for arrest. She turned the gas on, went upstairs, and took some pills to kill herself. They found her unconscious in her bed. She was taken to the hospital, where she was treated and ultimately released, and then immediately arrested on the charges of murder and tampering with food items. The family was informed of the arrest of Lana. A detective from York County called a nephew, Nick, and said, "Hey, Nick, I just want to bring you up to speed here." Lana confessed. Nick pulled over right away. It hit him like a ton of bricks, literally like a baseball bat to the face. He answered the phone, and Rosemary was on the other end screaming that she killed him. On January 16th, 2020, Lana accepted a plea deal and admitted guilt on charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a drug or food product. The original indictment was for murder. You were pleading to a lesser offense, voluntary manslaughter. My own knowledge of it was by watching movies and the cause of discomfort and diarrhea. Lana insisted she never intended for Steve to die and just wanted revenge for his abuse. But his friends and family did not buy that Steve was ever abusive. She tried to assassinate the character of Steve because other people who knew him and who he had. Men came forward to say he was a wonderful person. There was no abuse of any sort with Stephen. She was trying to do whatever she could to save herself from a very, very, very long sentence, and possibly the death penalty. But he was a gentle soul, not capable of harming someone. Based on the toxicology report, the prosecutors believe Steve suffered for 3 days before dying. Lana told them that the fatal dose was on Thursday morning. But we know as a matter of scientific fact from the toxicologist that is impossible. He would have died Thursday morning if he had ingested that Thursday morning. For him to have been sick all of that time, it indicated that she continually gave him medication throughout that time, poisoning him with Visine little by little. And Lana, a nurse, never sought to help him after the initial poisoning. Stephen would not have stayed in a urine-soaked mattress. He was a clean freak. He would not have stood for such a thing. He was too weak to get up and move. There was no phone in the house. There was no landline, so he could not call somebody. So this put him in a situation of being tortured, with no way to get help. And so finally, she knew Saturday, that is it. And she squeezed a whole bottle of Visine into his water, had him drink it, and then went out to mow the grass, so she did not have to watch the horror of his death. Instead of a nurse that helps, she was the nurse from hell. 53-year-old Lana Clayton was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She never admitted that she intended to kill Steve, but the facts showed otherwise. The family felt like there was no penalty that would have been great enough for Lana. This was 3 days of methodically poisoning the best friend of his sister and then killing him. The thought process that had to go into her putting on this charade. And she carried that right on through till the end. And that is the definition of a monster. But Lana almost got away with it. There almost was not an autopsy. If there had not been an autopsy, the ruling of the coroner would have been that this was likely a heart episode, and it was natural causes. The truth is she did this to herself, Had she been just the same quiet, gentle Lana, grieving the loss of Steve, no one would have had any suspicion whatsoever. Although Lana insisted the death of Steve was unintentional. His family and the prosecution believed it was a deliberate act motivated by financial gain. One obvious and glaring motive was the wealth of Steve. Without a will in the state of South Carolina, everything goes to the spouse. So Lana would know, if Steve is gone, I get everything. If somebody wanted to do something malicious like this, all they had to do was get rid of the will, and everything belonged to them. The family tried to move on without Steve in their lives. Hello. I mean, I miss a lot about Steve, but I miss his voice. I miss hearing his voice. This is my way of, getting away from the emotional stuff. I think what I miss about Steve is his over-the-top personality. This big, boisterous, gregarious character that enters a room and just takes over everything. Steve was an amazing person. It has been difficult not having him around. The thing I miss the most about Steve is his laughter and his ability to light up a room. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. In the end, though, the legacy of Steve Clayton is not one of shadows or the terrible act that ended his time on this earth. His legacy is the love he shared, the generosity he showed to the young men he mentored, the humor he brought to every family gathering, and the way he made his sister feel safe and honored. He was a man who lived fully, who walked with kindness, and who, even now, reminds us all that the most important things in life are the bonds we build and the love we leave behind. While his story ends in tragedy, his life remains a testament to the warmth, laughter, and courage that he brought into the world. He was, and always will be, a hero to those who knew him best. This is a story of a man whose spirit was as generous as his success was grand. He was a businessman who built empires, but to those who knew him best, he was simply the heart of the family. He was a man who met a nurse with a soul as kind as his own, and in that meeting, he found a love that he believed would last a lifetime. This is the story of Steve Clayton. The story begins in Miami on the 10th of March, 2007. It was a day of celebration, a day where love was in the air, and for the Clayton family, it was a day that felt bittersweet. Rosemary Clayton, or Rosie as her family affectionately called her, was preparing to walk down the aisle to marry her beloved, William Leslie. It was a beautiful day, yet for the family, it was marked by the absence of a man who should have been standing right there at the center of it all. 11 months prior to this wedding, the family had lost their father. In that void, there stood the head of the family, the oldest brother, 52-year-old Steve Clayton. Steve was the kind of man for whom family was not just a priority, it was his life. Though he had never had children of his own, he had always been a father figure to his 4 sisters. He was 10 years older than his youngest sister, Rosie, and she could not remember a single moment in her life where Steve was not present. He was her hero, the brother who played football, the brother who wrestled in high school, and the man who made the world feel like a much smaller, safer place. After graduating from college with a degree in finance, Steve had matured into a shrewd and successful businessman. He had co-founded a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which had grown into a national enterprise with centers across the entire country. Despite his professional achievements, Steve remained a man of deep humility and humor. He was always the first person to stand up at any gathering to offer a toast, and he never relied on notes. His words always came straight from the heart. At the wedding, he spoke to the groom, thanking him for making his sister so happy. And he spoke of their father, honoring his memory with a warmth that moved everyone in attendance. He was the entertainment, the one who kept the peace, and the one who made everyone laugh. Following a successful career, Steve achieved his goal of retiring at the age of 41. With his business sold, he dedicated himself to the art of living well and giving back. He spent his time mentoring young men, helping them start businesses, and guiding them toward their own futures. He was generous with his resources, and even more generous with his time. Years later, in late 2009, seeking a change of pace, Steve decided to leave his home state of Florida and move to North Carolina. He loved the outdoors, he loved to walk, and he loved being active. It was not long after this move that Steve announced he had met someone special. Her name was Lana Walsh. She was 12 years his junior, a nurse who had grown up in Oklahoma. To those around him, Lana seemed quiet and sweet, a contrast to Steve, whose personality was, in the words of his family, gigantic. Yet, they were inseparable. They were always arm in arm. And Steve seemed to have found a sense of peace and groundedness that he had been searching for. By November of 2013, the couple was married at their home in Charlotte. Soon after, they relocated to a beautiful home on the banks of Lake Wylie in South Carolina. a place that felt like something out of a postcard. They spent their days decorated with Steve's favorite antiques and artwork, and they enjoyed the simple pleasures of nature. Steve, always a child at heart, loved having family around, and he was a wonderful uncle to the children, often found playing on the floor with them, never too serious to engage in a game or a laugh. For years, life seemed to move in a rhythm of happiness. But in June of 2018, a shadow began to fall over the Clayton household. Steve, usually the picture of health and vitality, began to complain of vertigo and nausea. As a nurse, Lana suggested that he rest, and for a while, it seemed to work. By the time the 4th of July arrived, Steve was back to his old self, hosting a party where he danced and laughed with the people he loved. However, the peace was short-lived. On the 21st of July, 2018, a tragic call was made to the authorities. Steve was found at the bottom of the staircase in his home. The scene that greeted the responders was one of profound confusion and sorrow. His wife, Lana, was there, and she explained that Steve had been struggling with his health, suggesting that he had suffered a fall. In the weeks that followed, the family found themselves grappling with questions that had no easy answers. Why had Steve, a man so meticulous about his life, not left a will? Why was his phone missing? And why, when the family entered the master bedroom, did they find a mattress that suggested weeks of suffering? The grief they felt was complicated by a growing sense of unease. They requested an autopsy, a decision that would eventually uncover reality that none of them could have imagined. The toxicology report revealed the presence of substances that had no place in the system of a healthy man. It showed traces of tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient in common eye drops. When ingested, this substance is dangerous, and in high quantities, it is lethal. It had caused Steve to suffer immensely, limiting the blood supply to his vital organs. The investigation that followed uncovered a calculated and cold reality. Lana, the woman Steve had trusted with his heart, had been administering the poison, causing him to slowly decline over the course of those final days. She had confessed to the authorities that she had used the eye drops, driven by a desire for revenge over perceived grievances in their relationship. In January of 2020, Lana Clayton admitted her guilt, pleading to charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a food product. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. For the family, the justice served did not replace the man they had lost. Steve Clayton was a man who loved deeply, who lived vibrantly, and who mentored many. He was a brother, an uncle, and a friend whose laughter and presence were the glue that held so many together. While his life ended in a tragedy that shocked all who knew him, his memory remains in the hearts of those who remember him not for how he left this world, but for the light he brought into it while he was here. He was a man who truly knew how to love, and he remains, even now, an indelible part of the lives of all who had the honor of calling him family. This is a story of a successful and generous businessman. He was a man who radiated warmth and optimism, a person whose presence could illuminate even the most ordinary room. This is a tale of his life, his love, and the unfortunate circumstances that led to his passing. He was someone who, upon meeting a nurse with a heart as big as his own, found his life taking a turn he never could have anticipated. She struck him and those around him as being very quiet, but very sweet and very nice. He fell head over heels for her. He could not hide the feelings he had for her, for he was very much in love with her. But when a sickness consumed their marriage, the people who loved him most knew that there was something very wrong. Money is no protection against the cruelty of fate. This is not a natural death, but rather a somber reflection on the life of a man whose heart was filled with nothing but kindness. Welcome. Tonight we celebrate the joining of two wonderful people. It is March 10th, 2007, in the vibrant city of Miami. It is a big day for the bride, Rosemary Clayton, and her entire family. She is finally marrying her love, William Leslie. That is the oldest brother of Rosemary, 52-year-old Steve Clayton, proudly walking her down the aisle. 11 months prior to that wedding, the family lost their father. Rosemary asked her brother if he would step in and walk her down the aisle. Of course, there were a lot of tears shed that day. She could not imagine anybody else standing in the place of her father. When the minister asked who gives this woman to be married to this man, Steve replied with profound emotion, "I do, in the memory of my father." It was incredibly sentimental to be gathered at something so special where their father was not present in the physical sense. With the passing of their father, the brother of Rosemary, Steve, became the head of the family, and though he had never had children of his own, he had always been a father figure to his siblings. When his father and mother were married, Steve was just about 2 or 3 years old. He had 4 sisters, and Rosemary was the youngest. He was 10 years older than her. So there really was not a moment in her life when Steve was not present. Steve was her big brother, and he was her hero. He was everything a little girl would want in a big brother. He played football, and he wrestled in high school. That really made him seem bigger than life to his younger sister. After high school, Steve graduated from college with a degree in finance. He quickly matured into a shrewd businessman. Steve, with a partner, started a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which eventually became a national company with physical therapy centers all over the country. Steve and his sister met at work once in a hospital, and that is how they became friends. He was very successful and eventually sold his interest in his business. Basically, from that point on, he was retired. His goal was to retire at the age of 40. He missed it by 1 year, as he retired when he was 41. Selling his business freed up Steve to do whatever he wanted, and what he wanted to do was give back. He would mentor such a large group of young men, helping them start up a business or helping them find out what direction they wanted their life to go. Steve was extremely generous with not only his resources, but with his time. Steve always had time for his family. Rosemary captured footage as Steve teased their Uncle Max. It was special. Their father was not so funny. He was more serious. Serious, much more serious. He was always serious. But where did that money come from? Steve? I do not know. And when his sister Rosemary got married, it was a good humor of Steve that made him the life and soul of the occasion. Please get up, Steve. Plate. Steve was always the first guy to get up to give a toast anywhere. Hello, hello, hello. It was always ad-lib for him, straight from a heart. This is my way of, getting away from the emotional stuff. William, thank you so much. I am not going to look at you. Thank you so much for making my sister so happy. And my dad. Steve was never one to hide his emotions. My dad told me before he passed to take care of my sister, to honor you, and he loved you very much. I have to get serious here. All right, I am cool. All right, you guys are great companions. You are great partners. And my sister, I have never seen her happier. After the speeches, Steve stepped up for the father-daughter dance. He came up, and they got ready to dance. And before the music started, they had a very, very powerful moment. A surprise recording of their dearly departed father played out. The best moment of my day was when you were climbing my knee. You would say, "Daddy, I love you." I miss those days. I really do. Because I love you too. He had so many duties that day. He was a father figure. He was the best man. He was the entertainment. He was the one that kept everyone calm, kept everyone laughing. He was a natural at it. Despite his success and close network of family and friends, the romantic life of Steve had been rocky. He looked for a partner that was as focused, determined, loving, and caring as he was. And that is a tall order to fill. Now, at the age of 52, his family figured it would take a very special person to sweep him off his feet. Rosemary thought Steve was always looking for somebody on a level he could connect with emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. But 3 years later, that is exactly what happened. In late 2009, Steve decided to leave his home state of Florida for a change of pace in North Carolina. He really loved being physical. He loved walking. He loved anything to do with being outdoors. So, when he moved from South Florida to North Carolina, he had the opportunity to be outdoors a lot more. Within just a few months, Steve announced that he had met someone special. He seemed to have a glow that he had been missing for a little while, and he was excited. Her name was Lana Walsh, 12 years his junior. She was a nurse who grew up in Oklahoma. She struck Rosemary as being very sweet, very quiet, but very sweet. And this quiet kind of stood out because Steve was not very quiet. The personality of Steve was gigantic. She was more like a wallflower. Despite their differences, Steve was sure she was the one. They were very affectionate with each other, always arm in arm. Steve was always hugging her, squeezing her, and kissing her. Rosemary felt happy for her brother. So, of course, anybody that he loved, she was going to embrace. It was not long before Steve asked Lana to move in with him. After they got to know each other quite a bit more, Steve persuaded her to come to Charlotte. And, you know, Steve could be very convincing. They added some new additions to the family. The first dog that Steve and Lana got was Guinness, an Italian greyhound. They loved the breed, and so they decided that they wanted another one, and her name was Sadie. With Lana, Steve finally felt he had found his missing piece. Steve always had great things to say about her. He referred to her as his Lana Sue. He could not hide the feelings he had for her. He was very much in love with her. Rosemary felt that Steve found himself well grounded with Lana. She felt like Steve found a certain sense of peace with her. Steve Clayton came to North Carolina for a change from his old life and found a whole new future. When Steve Clayton danced with his sister at her wedding, he dreamed of finding his own special someone. And now, 6 years later, he was about to marry the love of his life, a Veterans Affairs nurse named Lana Walsh. It was a lovely day in November 2013. Many of the family members had traveled to North Carolina just to be there and enjoy that day with him, and he made it very special for everyone. The wedding of Lana and Steve took place at their house in Charlotte. It was such a beautiful event. You could just see the love. Both of them were beaming. Soon after, the couple decided to relocate and move into their forever home just over the border in South Carolina, on the banks of Lake Wiley. It was like something on a postcard. This gorgeous ocean blue home, sitting on a gorgeous piece of lakefront property. It was very lovely. The couple set about refurbishing their new home, decorating it with a collection of artworks and antiques of Steve. Steve was the kind of person for whom objects were very personal, and he was very proud of his possessions. They were all unique in some way. The move allowed the couple to indulge in their love of nature. So, if there was something fun and outdoors to do, he was going to be the first one there, and he was gung-ho about it. Their relocation to South Carolina also meant the pair were closer to the extended family of Steve. His nephew, who married the niece of Steve in 2010, officially became his nephew. He hung out with Steve and Lana a lot when they moved up there. They would go out to dinner with them, they would go to concerts, and they would go to special events every holiday. They were also just a 30-minute drive from the son and grandchildren of Lana, and the pair never said no to a bit of babysitting. Steve had a way with children because Steve had always been a child at heart. So he was the kind of guy that got down on the floor and played with the kids. Pop goes the weasel. And with the kids around, there was never a dull moment in the Clayton household. Here, Lana filmed Steve attempting to describe the limbo while her twin granddaughters watched. We will make Papa do it. So there's a stick, and I got to go like that. And I have got to go under the stick. And I have got to get real low to get under the stick. It is a game. It is a dance. These are dances. You have to tell me how to act it out. Lana was tickled, but the twins were more interested in their ice cream. Steve enjoyed playing all kinds of games, whether it was Scrabble or even a silly child's game. You wanted to get in, do you not? You do you not? Just spin the spinner, and then turn the handles many times. 2, and put your head in the thing. Put your chin on the thing. Okay, A, E, D, F, spin it forward. Both of them are 1. Both of them. Steve was a huge teddy bear. They loved to play with him. He always had kids hanging on him. What number did you get? 3. And Lana was always game for some fun, too. Oh no, it is coming. It is coming up. It does it every time. Here it comes. Here it comes. Cheers. 5 years into their marriage, Steve and Lana appear to be thriving. But in June 2018, Steve suddenly fell ill. He said he felt dizzy, complaining of vertigo. He said that his ear hurt and that he felt nauseous, and he started getting sick in the yard. Rosemary felt real bad for him. She knew that he had had issues with vertigo prior to this. He said he had been very ill and did not know exactly what was wrong. He just remembered that he was working out in the garden, and he started to feel dizzy, a little nauseous, a little dizzy, a headache, and he thought that maybe he had gotten sunstroke. You okay? Yeah. As a nurse, Lana thought the best thing for Steve was bed rest. He said he remembered laying down, and he said the next time he opened his eyes, 36 hours had passed. Worried, Rosemary called Lana to see if she could explain the mystery illness of Steve. She asked her what she thought was going on because that is very odd for any person of any age to lose 36 hours of time. And Lana said that he was fine, and that she was watching him, and she was making sure he was okay. Though he had never been ill like this before, Lana thought that Steve was just exhausted. Rosemary felt reassured that Lana was there to take care of him in any way that she could, especially with her knowledge as a nurse. It seemed the larger-than-life energy of Steve was starting to catch up with him. But just 2 weeks later, it appeared the treatment of Lana had worked. Steve was back to his old self, throwing a party for the 4th of July. That party was just as great as every other party they had been to there. Steve was his normal, affectionate self. Everybody had a great time. Here was Steve dancing with Lana as they celebrated in style. He grabbed Lana right away, and the family just kind of followed suit and all joined in. Rosemary remembered watching them hug and him kiss her, and they were completely in love. Things were good at the Clayton home, and no one doubted that the lives of Lana and Steve were going to be happy and long. On July 21st, 2018, a call came into the York County 911 emergency dispatch. Police units arrived on the scene, and body cam footage recorded by responding Officer Sergeant Day captured what they found. As they walked into the front door, there was Steve right at the bottom of this grand staircase. And unfortunately, at that point, he was gone. He was dead. You could hear the officers whispering and talking in low voices. That was because Lana Clayton was just around the corner, distraught and crying. So they did not want to say anything that was disturbing to her. So she said she left the next day. Did not put anything, just his wife and family. Sergeant Day needed to talk with the wife of Steve, Lana, to find out what had happened. Ma'am, I am Sergeant Day. I am going to be here for just a little while until the coroner gets here